Sri Narayan Sri Veerappa Moily, former Chief Minister, Union Minister. And in this context of Panchayati Raj, I would specially like to refer to Sri Moily as the chairman of the Second Administrative Reforms Commission, whose recommendations with regard to Panchayati Raj back in 2005 or 6, had they been accepted, then today India would have been a real democracy starting at the grassroots. I also want to refer to many colleagues, Sri D.R. Patil, Sri H.K. Patil, above all Sri Ramesh Kumar, whose report on Panchayat Raj in Karnataka was truly a path breaker, and on the basis of which a new act was passed in Karnataka and is being implemented. I won't say it's been totally implemented, but is being implemented. And others on this panel, like Dr. George Matthew, who have been long-standing colleagues of mine in this Panchayat Raj movement. Greetings to all of you. It really is a very great honor to be invited to participate in this birth centenary celebration of Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao, especially in regard to the sector on which I've been requested to concentrate, namely Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao's contribution to Panchayat Raj. We are all fully aware and reminded in the pink papers every day that it was under Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao that we had a major program of economic reforms that was helmed by Dr. Manmohan Singh. What is not mentioned sufficiently often is that it was under the Prime Ministership of Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao that the Congress succeeded where Sri Rajiv Gandhi had failed in getting the constitution amendments passed. And I would like to begin my reminiscences of this process by referring to a speech that I had made sometime in 1991, or maybe it was even earlier in 1990, where I had mentioned the commencement of Panchayati Raj as being the visit that Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, as Prime Minister of India, had made to Nagaur, the constituency of Sri S.K. Dey, who at that time was Minister of Community Development, in order to launch the Panchayati Raj program after the Balwant Rai Mehta study group had reported on what kind of Panchayati Raj we needed to establish in the country. When he heard that I had invoked that Nagaur meeting, Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao, who I think at that time was still to become Prime Minister, he reprimanded me, saying that you cannot mention Nagaur without also mentioning Warangal. So I was a bit surprised to hear of this. So I asked him, why should I invoke Warangal in the same breath as I talk of Nagaur? And he said that he was the Panchayat Raj minister in Andhra Pradesh, the old Andhra Pradesh. He was the minister in charge, and he had prevailed upon Jawaharlal Nehru to follow up almost immediately his visit to Nagaur by coming to Warangal and inaugurating Panchayati Raj in southern India, so that it could be demonstrated that this was a program that was meant for all parts of India, all villages of India, and not only the privileged state of Rajasthan. So I think it's not sufficiently known and needs to be emphasized that Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao was in no sense a Johnny come lately to Panchayati Raj. He didn't follow the fashion. It was not because he felt that he could attract the attention of 10 Janpat that he got interested in Panchayati Raj. He had been interested in it at a time when Rajiv Gandhi was a schoolboy. That is how long Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao's association with Panchayati Raj had been. But when Sri Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister of India, he had, that is, Sri Narasimha Rao had, so many other responsibilities. He had served as the Defense Minister, he'd served as the Human Resources Development Minister, he had served as the avail this opportunity to bring of Panchayati Raj activists in Karnataka and in the rest of the country, to all those who are listening to this program, that among the founders of Panchayati Raj in India, we must add the name of Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao. Unfortunately, after Panditji died in 1964, precisely because Panditji had passed a model law in Delhi, and that model law was put to everybody in the country. Panchayati Raj, which had become nationwide by 1963, unfortunately collapsed after 1964. Not immediately, but progressively. And that was the situation obtaining when Sri Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister of India. I often surprised him by pointing out that some, at least, of his key ideas trace their origin not to himself, but to his grandfather and to Mahatma Gandhi. And I undertook, for the benefit of the Prime Minister, a kind of survey of how the concept of Panchayati Raj had started with Mahatma Gandhi, how he had had a book written by Sriman Narayan Agarwal in 1946 called A Gandhian Framework for the Indian Constitution, which emphasized that democracy in India would be a tower without a foundation unless we started with Panchayat Raj in our villages. Now, this was not acceptable to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar because he felt that India's villages were cesspools of reaction, cesspools of caste discrimination, and he did not believe that inequality, social and economic inequality in our villages would yield to a truly democratic form of Panchayati Raj. And initially, in 1947-48, our Prime Minister was inclined to go along with Dr. Ambedkar. But after he had run his first 5-year plan, Panditji found that growth was not trickling down to the grassroots. And that is why, back in 1956, just as he was launching Mahalanobis's second 5-year plan, which put the emphasis on the heavy industrialization of India, he got Balwantrai Mehta, who was a Gandhian, due to become the Chief Minister of Gujarat and then to be martyred in the 1965 war with Pakistan. He, that is Jawaharlal Nehru, decided of his own accord that he was going to launch a program of Panchayati Raj, but he did not link it to changing the constitution. And this is because it was self-evident to him and to most of his colleagues in the different provinces and subsequently the states of India, that without grassroots democracy, there could not be either democracy or development in India. It seemed a self-evident proposition. And it's very ironic that his sister, Vijayalakshmi Pandit, who was the first local government minister in Uttar Pradesh, was the first state minister after 1937 to pass a local government act in Uttar Pradesh. And it is, I think, a crying shame that today it is Karnataka, Kerala, and some other states that are in the forefront, and Uttar Pradesh is lagging so far behind. That is, in my view, one of the principal reasons why it is perhaps the only remaining Bimaru state in India. Whereas states like Kerala, Karnataka, other states in southern India, in western India, and one remarkable example of a small state doing very well in Panchayati Raj is Sikkim, even under Pawan Chamling. And now we see it also happening in Tripura. So there are states that have moved and moved forward very fast. In fact, I would say that since the passage of the Constitution amendments, all states have moved forward in Panchayat Raj, but the pace at which some states, like those in southern and western India particularly, have moved forward is much faster than the pace at which some states in North and East India and Northeast India have been moving forward in the same regard. So with that as the background, let me return to Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao. In 1991, when completely unexpectedly, I'm sure he didn't expect this to happen himself, he suddenly found himself pitchforked into Parliament, into the Prime Ministership. He kept in mind the need to act on the constitutional amendments which Rajiv Gandhi had brought forward to Parliament in 1989, but had lost in the Rajya Sabha. And it is interesting that despite the heavy opposition, particularly in the Rajya Sabha, of the opposition parties to Rajiv Ji's initiative, it was not kept off the drawing board. The VP Singh government maintained it, but they wanted to make some changes so that instead of being associated with just one prime minister, his successor prime minister would also get some credit. And in that process, George Mathew, who's on this panel, had a key role to play. So they made a few changes, and I'm not going to go into it here, but I have written a major essay for a work published by the London School of Economics, which shows that some of the changes made by Sri George Mathew and his colleagues in that 64th and 65th Amendment bills were in fact an improvement on the bills. And when it came to the committee itself, the Joint Parliamentary Committee that looked into, it's called a Joint Select Committee, that looked into the draft of what was going to become the 73rd Amendment. It was interesting to find that the committee accepted many of the improvements made on Rajiv Gandhi's draft by the VP Singh government, The Chandrasekhar government did not have much time to deal with this issue or any other issue. And so I would say that we had a document that was not a Congress document, but a document which engaged several people across the board, including the left. Because the left, simply on principle, was making objections to Rajiv's draft, which were really not tenable. And I think much of the opposition that was expressed in 1989 was totally misplaced. And we could have passed the bill in 1989 itself. But because the bills came before Parliament on the eve of an election, it is understandable that the opposition wanted to deny the opportunity to Rajiv Gandhi to make a noise about his having passed this bill. So when he was no more, Mr. Narasimha Rao, who was a great consensus builder, for the first 3 or 4 months of his government, apparently he did nothing about Panchayati Raj. But he used the opportunity behind the scenes to create a national consensus. He brought around all the parties, except the Dravidian parties, who had objected to the 64th Amendment, to support the 72nd Amendment, as it was called. And that, I think, was a remarkable political achievement. I would say that without Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao's consensus building capacities, we may not have had Panchayati Raj in India. Of course, everybody also felt that the martyred Prime Minister needed a monument. And the most important monument that could be erected to his martyrdom was this Panchayati Raj Constitution Amendment Bill. And therefore, the country, the political parties, were more inclined in 1991-92 to support this radical change in our constitution than they had been back in 1986-89, which was the period during which Sri Rajiv Gandhi had evolved in his thinking towards the shape of Panchayati Raj, which found expression in the 64th Amendment that he tabled in the Lok Sabha on the 15th of May, 1989. So it was this consensus building that was really responsible for the welcome given when the Minister of State for Rural Development presented an alternative version which included the VP Singh amendments to Parliament as a draft bill. And I'm sure the political decision in this regard to not just insist on going back to Rajiv's draft, but to recreate, keep the essence of that draft and add to it the features that had been added by Sri VP Singh's government. That, I think, led to an atmosphere in which in September 1991, we had the Minister of State for Rural Development. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but he was from Andhra Pradesh, and I think his name was Krishna Swamy or Krishna Murthy. Perhaps Mr. Moily can...
Mr. Venkat Swamy. Mr.
Venkat Swamy. Yeah, okay. So he then...
Mr. Venkat Swamy.
Okay, Venkat Swamy. Okay.
Yes.
Sri Venkataswamy presented the new draft bill, and without any discussion, it was referred to the Joint Select Committee. And that, I think, was a very wise move on the part of the Prime Minister, because if we had started a discussion on the floor of the House, then certain differences would immediately have come up. But when we went before the select committee, there I would like to today recall the major contribution made by Sri Nitish Kumar, who is now the Chief Minister of Bihar, but who was then a very active member of the opposition. But on Panchayati Raj, he was 100% in favor of this bill. And we called in a number of witnesses, including Sri C. Narayan Swamy, and the kind of evidence that they gave persuaded any remaining skeptical members that it was necessary to bring in Panchayati Raj with all the key features that had already existed in the 64th Amendment. The major change of a very, very important nature, which I think had been made by the VP Singh government, was the Rural Development Secretary Shankaran's contribution that we must refer to the Gram Sabha in the Constitution Amendment itself. But because it was a late addition, while the Gram Sabha was mentioned, what the Gram Sabha should do was not specified even in an illustrative manner. And that, I think, is the single greatest weakness of the bill that we passed in December of 1992. That while it mentioned the Gram Sabhas, it did not specify or indicate, even illustratively, what the role could be. And without the Gram Sabha, there is no Panchayati Raj. So we needed to understand that. I think we should have also been more rigorous and less libertarian in leaving it to the states to decide what the size of the panchayat should be. So now we have a situation where in Kerala, a typical Gram Panchayat could have up to 35,000 members. And in Punjab, a typical Panchayat Raj entity, Gram Panchayat, would have about 2,000 members. So this makes for so much variety that much of what can be accomplished in, say, Kerala at the Gram Panchayat level has to be really undertaken at the level of the Taluka Panchayat in many other states. Anyhow, all these are details. What is most important is that there has been national acceptance of the inevitability of Panchayat Raj institutions at the grassroots to provide a strong foundation for democracy in India. And looking back on what I would call the joint achievement of Sri Rajiv Gandhi and Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao, I would say that we have succeeded in making Panchayati Raj irremovable, ineluctable, irreversible. There are exceptions, I know, including my own state of Tamil Nadu, where there has not been a strict implementation of some of the mandatory requirements of the Constitution, such as holding elections within 6 months if for any reason any one panchayat or all panchayats are dissolved. We haven't had elected panchayats in Tamil Nadu for several years now, although I expect that we will soon be having these panchayat elections. But notwithstanding some deviations from the mandatory requirements, the structure of Panchayati Raj has been uniformly accepted in all states of India where that structure was applicable. Because as all of you know, there are some states like Nagaland and Mizoram and Meghalaya which have been exempted from following the Constitution, and it was also exempted for Jammu and Kashmir. And I really regret that although they've recently had district development council elections and Hakka Panchayat elections, not even the removal of Article 370 has resulted in the implementation in Jammu and Kashmir of the provisions of Panchayati Raj, which are applicable in the rest of the country. So they're doing it in a very selective manner in areas that suit their interest. But notwithstanding these exceptions, some of which are very important, I think throughout the country, we not only have Panchayati Raj today, about 30 years after we passed the constitutional amendments, but the provisions with regard to representation and the representation of women, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes has been so effective that today there are 15 states of India which mandate 50% reservations for women. Some others that don't mandate it. The performance of women has been far above 33% or 40%. And the result is that there are more elected women in India alone today than in the rest of the world put together. Unfortunately, this achievement, which I think is the second biggest achievement of India after Jawaharlal Nehru brought in adult suffrage, is not recognized by the middle class. It's not even recognized by middle class women, because middle class women, upper class women, want representation in parliament and the state assemblies. Now, in my view, that should be given to them. It should be, without which our democracy is an inadequate democracy. But that doesn't mean that feminists should decry what is happening at the grassroots level. When I was Minister of Panchayati Raj back in 2007, there were elections, Panchayati elections held in Karnataka. And my joint secretary, who was from the Karnataka cadre, a young man called T.R. Raghunandan, who I think many of you know, pointed out to me that as against 33% reservations for SC women in SC seats, the share was 54%. And as against 33% reservations for ST women in ST seats, Karnataka had achieved the phenomenal figure of 65% representation of women in scheduled tribe seats. Who could have dreamt this if Dr. Ambedkar had known that this was the scale on which we would ensure that the weaker sections of India would be benefited by Panchayati Raj? I think he would have accepted. He would have moved away from his idea that our villages are cesspools of reaction. But that was possible only because of the genius of Rajiv Gandhi. It is possible because he perceived that an arbitrary reservation of seats on the basis of the share of the SC or ST population in the state as a whole would leave us in the same position as SC reservations, ST reservations in parliament have left us. Inadequate representation. So he said, you take every village, every taluka, and every district and estimate the share of the population in every village, every taluka, and every district. And on that basis, you effect the reservations for the SC and the ST. Thus, for example, if there are 50% SC in any given panchayat area, then 50% of the seats in that gram sabha, in that gram panchayat, will be reserved for the SC. If that percentage drops to 25% in the taluka level, then 25% reservation will be given in the Taluka Panchayat election. And if it drops to 15% at the district level, then the share of the scheduled caste will come down to 15% at the level. But this means that wherever there is a concentration of scheduled castes, and everywhere in proportion to their share of the population, they will find representation. And the consequence of this is that even when seats meant for women are de-reserved, seats meant for SC women are de-reserved, seats meant for ST women are de-reserved, there are many, many SC and ST women who have got themselves elected repeatedly from general seats. There is one particular case that I would like to mention from Solan district in Himachal Pradesh. She has served as the Gram Panchayat president when there were reservations for women, when there were reservations for SC, when there were reservations for SC women, and when there were no reservations for women. 5 times over, she has been re-elected as the Gram Panchayat president. And that is only one example. There are many, many other examples. And it is very unfortunate that because SC women and poorer women were coming up in these village panchayat elections in states like Rajasthan and Haryana, they have made provisions there which have resulted, for example, in Haryana, in 85% of the women who were elected the previous time not getting elected this time. And that is because the poorer women want their own kind to represent them, because they know that the poorer a woman representative is, the more likely she's to be living in the village. Whereas the richer village women tend to go to the capital or go to some nearby big town and only occasionally come back as absentee landlords to collect their rents and for the rest to live in urban areas. So all this is a major achievement. But what is the biggest failure? There are 2 very big failures. I would say 3 very big failures. One of them I would attribute to Sri Narasimha Rao himself not accepting the view that Rajiv Gandhi had more than once expressed to me and expressed on the floor of the House, to have a single ministry in Delhi to deal with the panchayats and the urban local bodies. As soon as the bill was passed in the Rajya Sabha on the 22nd of December 1992, I rushed to Srimati Sonia Gandhi and I told her that this is the moment to strike. Please write a letter to Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao saying have a single ministry for local government. Unfortunately, that letter went, but that never got accepted and has still not been accepted. So we only have states like Kerala, I don't know which others, which have a single ministry where both streams of local self-government are being looked after. But in Delhi, I'm afraid the Ministry of Urban Development is actually a ministry of metropolitan development. And now it has become a ministry of central vista development. The ULBs and the 74th Amendment are completely ignored. And it is only the wisdom of a few states that has resulted in ULBs being accorded the same kind of progress that we find in rural government. But in rural government, there have been improvements. And since Shri K.R. Ramesh Kumar is here, I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for having produced a report which has resulted in legislation in Karnataka being by far, I'm talking of Panchayat Raj legislation, being by far the best in the country, the very best. And he's overtaken even Mr. Ghorpade. Now, I want on this occasion also to pay my respects and my tribute to Mr. Ghorpade, because he not only under the leadership of Sri Moily did a very, very good job of the first legislation in Karnataka back in 1992 or 93, must have been 93, that the conformity legislation was passed. But after that, when there were reactionary elements within the Congress party trying to reduce reservations in the Congress party, Ghorpade ji stood by my side, and we were both heavily supported by Srimati Sonia Gandhi to push back the reactionary forces in the Congress party. And then later on, when Sri Veerappa Moily was named the chairman of the second Administrative Reforms Commission, he sent one of his major officers, a lady called Vinita Rai, to talk to me about what we needed to do. And we had a private conversation. And I was very, very happy to find that almost everything in that private conversation was reflected in his report. And after the Moily report came out, the cabinet set up an empowered group of ministers under Sri Pranab Mukherjee to implement the recommendations of the Moily Committee, or the Moily Commission, I should say, the Administrative Reforms Commission. And I don't know what happened with regard to other ministries, but with regard to Panchayati Raj, where you cannot beat the Moily Commission recommendation. When we met with Renuka Chaudhary and Ramvilas Paswan and me under the chairmanship of Pranab Mukherjee, the other two ministers were so adamant that they would change nothing in their ministries and not give powers to the panchayats, even though I was able to demonstrate convincingly that SC representation and women's representation, and don't forget that Ramvilas Paswan was SC and Renuka was and is a woman. They just refused, with the result that we had only one meeting of that EGOB, and the Moily recommendations went into history. I think that is a great tragedy. And if the Karnataka Panchayat Parishad can do something about reviving the Moily Commission recommendations, I think it would be a very constructive contribution to the celebration of Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao's centenary. There is, of course, a great deal more to be said about other contributions that Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao made, but this is not the forum. I've already spoken for nearly half an hour, and I was asked by Sri D.R. Patil to confine myself to Panchayati Raj and Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao's contribution to it. I hope I have done him justice, and at the same time done justice to people like Thomas Isaac, Ghorpade ji, Moily ji, who have made incredible contributions to Panchayati Raj. In fact, Mr. Moily succeeded me as Minister of Petroleum. I wish Dr. Manmohan Singh had made him, in addition to petroleum, also the Minister of Panchayati Raj. Then maybe the traditions that I was attempting to establish could have been carried forward. But I regret to say that UPA 2, I'm talking of Dr. Manmohan Singh, the Congress party, neglected Panchayati Raj, neglected the report that I prepared as chairman of the expert committee on leveraging Panchayati Raj institutions for the more efficient delivery of public goods and services. And this government has no interest whatsoever in any kind of Panchayati Raj. They just stick with whatever it was in Gujarat, and everything is now unraveling. And therefore, I was delighted to learn earlier today that Sri C. Narayan Swamy has been appointed as the state coordinator for the Rajiv Gandhi Panchayat Raj Sangathan, which I had the privilege of being the convener of till about 7-8 years ago. And the new convener, who's the national chairman, that is Meenakshi Natarajan, has named Sri Narayan Swamy today. In fact, just a few minutes before I opened the computer to be on this program, I received this message from Sri Narayan Swamy, and I would like to congratulate him in the presence of all these doyens of Panchayati Raj on having achieved this. I would also appeal to Sri Ramesh Kumar to have a review committee set up of his recommendations to see how far his brilliant recommendations can be implemented, and whether there is anybody, at least within the Congress party, at the central level, perhaps Sri Moily himself, who could revisit the Panchayati Raj section of the Moily Administrative Commission recommendations and try and make this a policy for the Congress party. Unfortunately, tragically, Panchayat Raj has just fallen off the radar for the Congress party. It's not there. There was not one mention of Panchayati Raj in the 2019 election. If you don't mention Panchayati Raj, there is nothing specific that the Congress can distinguish itself from the BJP by. And I was sitting with Prashant Kishore a couple of days ago. I wanted to congratulate him on his marvelous achievement in West Bengal. And of his own accord, without any prompting from me, he said that unless and until the Congress party, the Indian National Congress, I'm talking about the AICC, plays the Panchayat card, there's no way the Congress will come back to power. And although he was not at all around when Rajivji was the Prime Minister of India, I was amazed at how well he understood the essence of Panchayati Raj. And he said that he has tried. I do recall that back in 2013, soon after Rahul Gandhi had been declared the Vice President of the Congress, he met me on a stage and said to me that till a few years ago, I used to agree with you only 75%. But now I agree with you 100%. And after that, till today, I have not been able to meet Sri Rahul Gandhi. There are others here who do, including Mr. Moily. And I hope, since I am not able to carry the message to the Gandhi family, Sri Moily will avail of this opportunity to carry the message to them that the greatest political strategist in contemporary India is of his or is of the same view as all of us on this panel are, and especially Sri Veerappa Moily is, that without playing the Panchayat Raj card, there is no way in which the Congress will come back to power in Delhi. Now, there have been some excellent suggestions given to me by Sri Ghorpade's brother, Venkatesh Ghorpade. And I am not able to transmit it to a higher level, partly because of the COVID lockdown. But now that Sri Narayan Swamy has been named the state coordinator, I would request him to be the first to put forward the younger Ghorpade's All India recommendations to Meenakshi Natarajan instead of leaving it to me to do. I'm sure Mr. Narayansamy will have greater credibility with Meenakshi than I have. And so I still see hope. I am always there for those who want me. The Gandhi family may not want me, but the Karnataka Panchayat Parishad, I think, does want me. So I'll always be with you. You are the exceptional body in the country, exceptional, that is promoting Panchayati Raj, not only in your state, but at an all India level. In Kerala, there is a concentration on Kerala, and therefore it's very good. But they don't have all India recommendations to make, at least none that they're pressing. They are concentrating on their state. But the Karnataka Panchayat Parishad is number one concentrating on Karnataka, because many of the younger Ghorpade's recommendations relate exclusively to Karnataka, but they are very relevant, some of those recommendations, to the all India level. And so I would like to end by requesting Sri Narayanswamy, who's always rather modest and keeps himself in the background, to now take up his new responsibility at the all India level in a very serious manner, and to do for Panchayati Raj what some of the rest of us had been doing in an era that is now bygone. Thank you all very much. Jai Panchayati Raj, Jai Hind.